Now remember, some of you are saying, you know, I've got no Agile at all. And what we've got here is, if I go back to that previous slide here, previous flip chart paper, this here is, if you like, one of the most basic concepts in Agile. And it's called backlog and sprint. Namely, this list is known as a backlog, or a to-do list, prioritised list of requirements, whatever you want to call it, but it's commonly referred to as a backlog. Now, backlog might sound like a negative word, but actually the term, you know, backlog is just, you know, stuff that needs to go into the existing product, okay? So one of the most simplest ways of running Agile, and this is why I'm trying to show you some Agile basics here, but really simple basics, is you have a product backlog here, and often these are written in the form of what are called user stories. And we'll come on to user stories later on the course, what they actually look like. But you have a backlog, and as I say, you then create, if you like, a subset of the backlog, which is a sprint that you work on over a short time span, anything up to a month, but typically 2 to 4 weeks. Probably the most typical is 2 weeks. Bigger projects might need 3 weeks or 4 weeks, or bigger situations. But this idea, backlog, you take a subset called a sprint, and you then, on a daily basis, you have a meeting every day to see how it's going. This is known as a scrum meeting or a daily stand-up meeting. And at the end of that sprint of, say, I'll use the example 2 weeks, out pops a shippable product at the end. Now this is probably the most common view of Agile. When people are talking about Agile, this is what we're looking at. And therefore it's a time-boxed approach. Again, typically for software. There's various techniques that people are using, like stand-up meetings, and you know, 70% of what you read in here is probably going to be using the approach called Scrum. Scrum doesn't stand for anything; it just comes from a huddle of people. It's a bit like a rugby scrum, but it's not about, you know, a load of people pushing against each other.